Welcome to Binge True Crime, Despots and Dictators. Israel Keys. Imagine a predator who crisscrosses the nation, leaving a trail of terror that's almost impossible to trace. Israel Keys, a name etched in infamy, meticulously buried murder kits across America, choosing his victims at random and evading law enforcement with chilling precision. His crimes, fueled by bank robberies and arson, defied patterns, making him one of the most elusive serial killers in history. Arrested in 2012, Keys took his secrets to the grave, committing suicide and leaving a haunting legacy of unanswered questions. Join us as we uncover the dark mysteries he left behind. Here are 5 unique facts about Israel Keys that distinguish him from other serial killers. Unique fact 1. Travel patterns. Israel Keys holds a unique and chilling position in the annals of American crime. Unlike most serial killers that typically operate within a confined geographic area, his activities spanned the entire United States. This, along with a masterfully crafted approach, made his crimes particularly difficult to detect. Keys was born in Richmond, Utah, in 1978, and his life of crime began early with burglaries and arson. However, it was his transformation into a serial killer that truly highlighted his cunning and adaptability. He did not have a specific victim profile, choosing his targets randomly and ensuring they had no connection to him. To avoid detection, Keys meticulously planned his murders well in advance. He would fly to different states, rent cars, and often drive hundreds of miles to find his victims. This strategy let him commit crimes far from his home in Anchorage, Alaska, thereby complicating any investigation into his activities. He used various methods to cover his tracks, including paying in cash, turning off his cell phone, and even removing his phone battery to avoid GPS tracking. One of his most horrific acts was the murder of Samantha Koenig, an 18-year-old barista from Anchorage. Keys abducted her from her workplace, took her to a remote location, and killed her. He then used her debit card to withdraw money from her account in several states, providing a chilling example of his mobility and what he would do to evade capture. Keys also buried kill kits across the country, buckets filled with weapons, cash, and tools to carry out his murders. These kits were hidden years before the actual crimes, highlighting his extraordinary level of premeditation and planning. Israel Keys' travels took him across the contiguous United States, from Washington to Vermont, and many places in between. His ability to blend in and avoid suspicion, combined with his strategic planning, made him a formidable criminal. His reign of terror only came to an end in 2012. Thank you for taking time to watch our podcast and channel. If you like what you see and hear, please like and subscribe to my channel. It is very important and meaningful for me. Unique fact 2. Kill kits. Israel Keys, a notorious American serial killer, operated with a level of premeditation rarely seen. One of the most chilling aspects of his methodology was the use of kill kits, containers buried across the United States and filled with tools and weapons for his gruesome activities. The kill kits were typically large, sturdy containers, or buckets, painstakingly prepared and buried in remote locations. Each kit contained a variety of items designed to facilitate his murders and cover his tracks. These included firearms, silencers, ammunition, ropes, duct tape, zip ties, shovels, cash, and even bottles of Drano to aid in body disposal. By preparing these kits years in advance, Keys ensured he had everything he needed to carry out his crimes without arousing suspicion by purchasing items locally. The placement of these kits was strategic. Keys would travel across the country, often to locations far from his home in Anchorage, Alaska, to bury them. He carefully selected secluded, often rural spots where the kits would remain undisturbed until he returned to retrieve them for his planned murders. This strategy allowed him to operate in a seemingly spontaneous manner while actually following a well-thought-out plan. One of the most notorious uses of these kits was in the murder of Bill and Lorraine Currier in Essex, Vermont, in 2011. Keys had buried a kit near their home years earlier. He retrieved it and used its contents to break into the Currier's home, abduct them, and eventually murder them in an abandoned farmhouse. This crime demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of his methods and the deadly potential of his murder kits. Keys' use of kill kits significantly complicated law enforcement efforts to track him down. The geographical spread of the kits and the random selection of his victims made it difficult to establish patterns or predict his next move. His arrest in 2012, after using a victim's debit card, eventually led to the discovery of some kits. The troubling kill kits underscored the cold, calculated nature of Keyes and how dedicated he was to his macabre craft. They served as a grim reminder of the lengths he would go to exact his horrifying endeavors. Unique Fact 3. Random victims. Unlike many serial killers who have specific victim profiles, Israel Keyes chose his victims entirely at random. This added a layer of unpredictability to his crimes, making them significantly harder for law enforcement to solve. Keyes targeted people of different ages, genders, and backgrounds, based purely on opportunity and convenience. This method of selection was part of his broader strategy to evade detection. By not fitting into any particular profile, Keyes ensured his crimes were not easily linked, further complicating the efforts of investigators. An infamous example was his murder of barrister Samantha Koenig in Anchorage, Alaska. Keyes abducted Koenig from her workplace simply because the 18-year-old was alone and her murder was a convenient opportunity. He later confessed to this crime, revealing the chilling casualness with which he selected his victims. Another example is the double murder of Bill and Lorraine Currier in Essex, Vermont. Keyes had no prior connection to the Curriers and chose them purely because their home was accessible and he could get to them. The randomness extended to his geographical selection as well. Keyes traveled extensively across the United States, committing crimes in various states and complicating efforts to trace his activities. His murders in different jurisdictions meant local law enforcement agencies were often unaware of similar crimes happening elsewhere, further hampering investigations. The lack of a specific victim type also meant that no one felt particularly safe. The victims included men and women, young and old, which created a pervasive sense of fear. His ability to blend in and appear unremarkable allowed him to approach his victims without raising suspicion. Israel Keyes' practice of selecting random victims highlights the terrifying nature of his crimes. They were highly unpredictable and posed a significant challenge to law enforcement. His capture in 2012 brought an end to his spree, but questions remain regarding the true extent of his crimes and his legacy of fear. Unique Fact 4. Bank robberies and arson. Israel Keyes was not only a heartless serial killer, but also a bank robber and arsonist. Keyes used the proceeds from these heists to fund his extensive travels across the United States. By committing these robberies, he ensured a steady flow of untraceable cash, which allowed him to maintain a low profile and avoid detection. One of his most notable heists occurred in 2009 when he robbed a community bank branch in Tupper Lake, New York. Keyes meticulously planned the robbery, donning a disguise and carefully choosing a remote location to minimize the risk of a quick police response. The success of this robbery, and others like it, gave him the financial means to continue his murderous activities without attracting undue attention. Keyes also used arson, both as a diversionary tactic and as a means to destroy evidence. By setting fires, Keyes could create chaos, diverting law enforcement resources away from his primary activities. These fires also served to eliminate any forensic evidence that might link him to his crimes. One such instance was the arson of an abandoned house in Texas. Keyes set the structure on fire to cover his tracks after a robbery. These activities added layers of complexity to his criminal profile. By engaging in bank robberies and arson, Keyes created a multifaceted criminal persona that made it harder for law enforcement to pinpoint his true intentions. The seemingly unconnected nature of his crimes, from murder to bank robbery to arson, obscured the patterns investigators typically rely on to solve cases. Keyes' ability to seamlessly integrate these activities into his overall strategy demonstrated his cunning and adaptability. Unique Fact 5. Confession and suicide. Israel Keyes, a name that strikes fear into the hearts of many, was arrested in March 2012 in Lufkin, Texas, for the kidnapping and murder of barista Samantha Koenig. Following his arrest, Keyes began a series of confessions that would unravel the extent of his dark and twisted life. However, his confessions were far from complete, as he intentionally withheld crucial details to maintain a semblance of control over the investigation. During his interrogations, Keyes confessed to multiple murders spanning various states. He also provided some details about his modus operandi. Despite his confessions, Keyes was careful not to reveal the identities and locations of all his victims, ensuring that he kept investigators in the dark about the full extent of his crimes. Keyes' behavior during interrogation was marked by a disturbing blend of arrogance and detachment. He toyed with investigators, providing just enough information to demonstrate his control, but never enough to fully solve the cases. His confessions painted a picture of a cold, calculating killer who derived satisfaction from the power he held over life and death, as well as the investigation into his crimes. On December 2, 2012, Israel Keyes was found dead in his jail cell at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. He had committed suicide by slashing his wrists and strangling himself with a bedsheet. His death came as a shock and left many questions unanswered. In his cell, authorities discovered a blood-soaked 11-page suicide note, but it contained no concrete details about his victims or their locations. Instead, the note was a disturbing, poetic reflection on his life and crimes, filled with cryptic and nihilistic musings. Keyes' suicide ensured that many aspects of his criminal activities would remain shrouded in mystery. His refusal to provide comprehensive victim details meant that some families might never know what had happened to their loved ones. The full scope of his murderous spree, including the exact number of his victims, remains unknown. His final act of defiance was to take his secrets to the grave, leaving behind a chilling legacy of unanswered questions and enduring fear. Thank you for joining us for this account of Israel Keyes. Return often and join us again as we gaze into the minds of the world's most notorious criminals, unraveling the mysteries that lie at the heart of their actions. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, the face of evil is not always what it seems. Thank you for taking time to watch our podcast and channel. If you like what you see and hear, please like and subscribe to my channel. It is very important and meaningful for me.